Hey everyone, it's me again, Chase, with my business idea for an international cafe bar initially located in Bogota, Colombia, but with multiple location and franchise options totally available once the business model is proven. Remember that a startup is to be a guide and a map for a business plan that can be duplicated or replicated, all of that. So I'm going to give you my 2-minute pitch, and then I'm going to kind of talk through some of the content that we were asked to speak about this week in a little bit more of an informal way than perhaps I did last week. So without further ado, let's get started. COVID-19 aside, the middle class in Latin America, particularly in Colombia, is expanding. And these people are seeking more interesting ways to spend their money. However, there's still that old mentality of not wasting money and only buying essential items. Things that are essential can be different from one person to another, but collectively as a culture, I think they all agree that coffee is very important, and also most adults like to relax after work with a few drinks, alcoholic beverages, that is. So my idea is to create an international cafe during the day that becomes a bar at night, which hosts international volunteer workers who come for limited time to work and interact and have a unique experience, while also creating a unique experience for our customers, the local people of Bogota. When you go and talk to your significant other and you say, hey, I spent 5% of my paycheck or I spent 10% of my paycheck at the bar, maybe you might be in trouble. But we can flip that on its head when you go, hey, honey, I went to this bar. Yeah, I spent some money, but for an hour, I got to talk to this guy from Canada, and he really helped me understand the language from a different way. You know, that's going to help me in this next job interview, or that's going to help me with this promotion, or in general. So when we're looking at how the cafe bar can add value to people's lives, we're taking products they already purchase, namely coffee and alcoholic beverages, and we're putting a little extra on top, which is the ability to have an intercambio with people from all over the world. All right, so talking a little bit about channels for my business, because it is a physical location that requires walk-in traffic, it would be a direct channel, but I could also promote the location in indirect means using virtual channels. But speaking more to the direct channel, I see a lot of people on the sidewalk passing out flyers for restaurants and different events. We could do something similar. I'm not sure to what effect that would have, but we could definitely do something similar. I could also directly go into businesses and organizations and tell them what we do, where I am, give out discounts if need be, just to generate interest and see if I can't drum up some business that way. The customer lifetime value portion of this week was really interesting for me. I tried going to some mom and pop cafes and bars around my house. There's a few. I'm not saying I went to tens or anything like that. I went to like four. But they were a little suspicious of me. Like, well, why is this American guy asking us about our customer counts? So I did end up going to Tostal, which is a small cafe chain, real small building cafe chain. You find them all over Bogota. They're very popular. And I spoke with him in a way that made it sound like I was just a concerned uh, American, like, oh my gosh, this economic downturn, it's crazy, right? So he was a little more open to me. Plus, because they're chains, he's not the proprietor, so he was okay talking to me. He told me that their daily customer count is about 200 people with hours of operation of 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. And that is up from the COVID low in March and April of last year, but it is still a very low number compared to their pre-pandemic customer counts. In Tostal, they have a very limited menu. You have like five coffee drinks to choose from. You have French cappuccino, espresso, tinto, which is a traditional coffee here, and then you have a few different sizes. And their prices are a little bit above mom and pop cafe, but not so much that people wouldn't go. Plus, it has the look and feel of a Starbucks. If you just like shrunk a Starbucks, some don't even have seating. So I'm looking at the pastries and how much they cost, and they're going from the low 800 pesos all the way up to 4,000 pesos. And as we're talking, I can see people are typically getting a small bread type thing and a coffee, and they're averaging around 4,000 pesos. It's like, okay, I can see that maybe the average transaction cost here is about 4,000 pesos or a dollar 10. And if I look at my surveys, which said that about 80% of people purchase at least one coffee, if not more, outside of the house per week. Okay, so if I could say the average transaction is 4,000 pesos per week, maybe they don't buy it every week, maybe 45 out of the 52 weeks, people are making this purchase. I'm real conservative with my numbers. I never assume the biggest, I always assume the smallest. So looking at 200 customers making a 4,000 peso purchase once a week, that brings me, for 45 weeks, that brings me to 36 million pesos, which right now at today's exchange rate is about $10,000, which does not sound like a whole lot. But what if I told you 36 million is enough for me to pay the rent and the water and power in a nice part of Bogota? I wouldn't have the biggest space in the world, but for an average of about 3 million pesos per month, I could rent out a building for 2 million, 2,000,000, 300,000, and then use the remainder for water and power. And that would clear it, I have no doubt. I looked at one place just as a call, and they told me that the rent there was 1,500,000, and it was two levels. It had enough space, and it was right next to the entrance to two of these communities that have million-dollar homes. So I said, okay, that could be doable. The one thing that I don't have, this is Holy Week in Colombia, or for any practicing Catholics out there. Uh, since this is a very Catholic country, everything closed early on Wednesday, and so I have a little bit more difficulty getting some additional information from people. But if I'm looking at just the cafe part, the customer lifetime value of just the cafe, that covers the bases. Then the bar portion can be where I generate the revenue for the paychecks of my employees and the inventory that I purchase on a routine basis. And of course, what I pocket for myself. So I like that. It definitely requires a little bit more investigation. But since people typically don't just buy one beer at a bar and then leave, they buy, a few, I would say that I'm onto something here, and that excites me very much. The other part of my business idea is the international exchange slash consulting events with English language and borderline educational. And I have a friend here, and she does consulting for language schools and private schools, just to improve teachers and how they interact with students, and to show some different methodologies for teaching English as a foreign language. She told me that she charges 100,000 pesos per hour, and she has a 4-hour minimum. So no matter what event, even if it's only a 2-hour event, she is making 400,000 pesos, which right now is like $135. But it can be a little bit slow, so she also does some private teaching on the side. She told me that she supplies her own media, like the PowerPoints and whatnot, the handouts, and that she requests that they have a projector or a microphone if need be at the conference space or at the business she goes to. But she's pretty flexible, and she told me you have to be flexible because sometimes you get somebody who says, "Hey, I don't have a huge space. You're not going to be performing. You're not going to be lecturing in front of many people. So how about 200,000 pesos?" And she will accept it. Like literally, she says she pretty much accepts anything. But she advertises as such just to establish a standard. I think that's smart. Um, However, we differ a little bit because I would try to do the event and the educational portion in a more social and scenario-based way, having my team going where they're requested, having events in the cafe bar depending on the size of the event, maybe closing it down or whatever it might be, depending on who is contracting us to have an event. Another thing that called my attention while watching this week's video is hosting hiring and interview events for jobs requiring English. When you walk around Bogota, there's many malls. Malls are alive and thriving in this city. And you'll see sometimes that they have like little events, like a hiring seminar. I'm wondering if maybe the kinds of businesses that need people that have multiple languages would be interested in having their hiring event for free at my location or locations. And that way I can just get some business by having them buy a coffee while they're there doing the interview, having them buy a drink while they're waiting for their turn. And then that also creates brand awareness and hopefully repeat business. So I added that to a potential way to earn as a potential revenue source. What else did I write here? Um, yes. My products and services don't necessarily replace any existing revenue. They simply take things that already exist and build upon them and combine them in a way that adds superb value. All right, so now I'm going to show you my new canvas. And before I do that, I want to show you all some pictures I found online of what I think my cafe bar location would look like. So let's take a look at those. So looking online for different images of what I would like, I found these pictures which really stood out to me for the kind of concept I want. What do they all have in common, except for the one in the upper right-hand corner, is there's people, there's some color, there's some mixing, and these are really the images that I would like to present to anybody who is interested in knowing how I envision it. I do not want anybody to be like the gentleman in the bottom right picture in the black shirt who is drinking by himself. He should be a part of the group. So hopefully, when we see that, we'll catch them and say, "No, no, no, come and talk to us." All right, now here's my canvas. All right, so real quickly, here's my business model canvas. It's a little bit cleaner than the last 2 weeks now that I'm starting to understand the different segments of my business, particularly the customer segments. It's divided into two. Working professionals, language learners, that's one customer segment. People that come, that are attracted naturally to the place, rather they just want a coffee or a beer, or because they're aware of our international multicultural approach. And the other part would be businesses that do have it. They're international, or maybe they have to deal with international type topics, and so they might want our services for training or just for you know development in general, which means that my revenue streams will remain primarily beverages and small food items and some in-house events, but also consulting and direct business-to-business events where maybe the cafe bar location is not where the event is hosted, but rather the team then goes to the business that has hired us. You'll see also my canvas now that it's a little bit shorter. I'm not so wordy. It's still wordy, but it's not as wordy as the other ones. And that I can see the value proposition being more not just necessarily on the coffee and the alcoholic beverages but also it's a place where people can gather, where we can get a sense of community again as things continue to normalize. We have a long way to go, but things are going to continue to normalize, and people are going to want places to gather in public. So take a look at this. Pause my video if you'd like to look at my business model canvas and let me know what you guys think in the comments. Thank you all so much and have a terrific rest of your week.